All right, today we're jumping into a really dramatic story of a national turnaround, pulled from the ancient pages of 1 Samuel, chapter 7. It's this powerful story about a nation that hits absolute rock bottom and how they found their way back to victory. Let's get right into it. So let me just start by asking you this. How do you reverse a 20-year losing streak? I mean, we're not talking about a bad season or a slump here. This is a whole generation living in crisis. And that was the desperate situation ancient Israel was facing when our story begins. For 2 whole decades, the Ark of the Lord, which was seen as the very symbol of God's presence on earth, it wasn't even with the people. It was stuck in a town called Kiriath Jearim. And the text says that for that entire time, the people of Israel mourned. They could feel that distance, and they knew something was just fundamentally broken. So, what did this national crisis actually look like on the ground? Well, it wasn't just one problem. They were getting hit from 2 different directions, fighting for their very soul. On the outside, you had the Philistines, this powerful enemy just crushing them militarily. But the text suggests the real problem, the bigger one, was internal. They were spiritually adrift. And here's the wild part. Even while they were mourning their distance from God, they were also kind of hedging their bets. They were worshiping other gods, these local Canaanite deities called the Baals and the Ashtoreths. They were a nation with a totally divided heart. And right into the middle of all this confusion, the prophet Samuel steps onto the scene. And man, he does not mess around. He comes back with this super clear, no-nonsense ultimatum that basically forces the nation to make a choice. Samuel's challenge is incredibly direct. He lays down 2 conditions, and they are totally non-negotiable. First, sincerity, with all your hearts. No more half measures, no more going through the motions. And second, exclusivity. Serve him only. Basically, the time for spiritual multitasking, it's over. And their response wasn't just an emotional promise. It was real action. They went, they gathered up their idols, all their images of Baal and Astarte, and they destroyed them. This physical act proved that they were actually serious about this. So the people all come together at a place called Mizpah to make this whole thing official. But right as they're in the middle of this deeply spiritual moment, their brand new faith is about to be put to a massive, high-stakes test. At Mizpah, they do these really symbolic things. They fasted for the whole day, they confessed their sin out loud, and then they did something interesting. They drew water and poured it out before the Lord. It was this powerful picture of them just pouring their hearts out, a demonstration that they were willing to give up even life's essentials to prove they were serious. And right then, at their moment of maximum vulnerability, they haven't eaten, they're weak, they're deep in prayer, the Philistines hear about this big gathering and think, hey, perfect time to attack. So they do. And the Israelites are absolutely terrified. It looks like their great act of repentance has just put a giant target on their backs. But here's the thing you have to see. This battle is about way more than just swords and shields. It's actually a theological showdown, and it's designed to answer one very specific, very crucial question. To really get the climax here, you have to understand Baal. In the Canaanite world, Baal wasn't some minor god. He was the god of the storm. He controlled thunder, lightning, rain. That was his whole deal. His voice was the thunder. He was the one you prayed to for good crops and for power in battle. And that sets up this incredible turning point. Just think about it. The Israelites had just thrown away their idols of Baal. They had renounced the very God who supposedly controlled the storm. So now, with an army about to wipe them out, the real question is just hanging in the air. Who truly holds that power? Was their repentance a huge mistake? Or was it an act of faith in the one true Creator? And the answer is just stunning. At the exact moment the Philistines attack, the Lord, Yahweh, unleashes Baal's own signature weapon, a massive thunderstorm. But he uses it against Baal's followers. It's the most dramatic mic drop moment, demonstrating once and for all who really controls the storm. It's a theological knockout, and it throws the Philistines into such a panic that Israel wins a total victory. So after the battle, Samuel sets up this big stone as a memorial, and he gives it a name, Ebenezer. In Hebrew, Eben means stone, and Ezer means help. So it's literally the stone of help. And as he places that stone, Samuel declares, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." This wasn't just some monument to a battle. It was a permanent, physical reminder that their deliverance came directly from God's intervention. Period. So, what can we pull from this incredible story? Well, the whole narrative gives us this powerful blueprint for what genuine repentance actually looks like in practice. Let's break it down into 5 key lessons. First, the people themselves initiated it. They took responsibility. Second, it was a group action, which shows us repentance can be corporate, not just an individual thing. Third, and this is so key, it required both sincere motives and tangible, changed behavior. Words weren't enough. Fourth, it led to exclusive worship, no more divided loyalties. And finally, number 5, repentance doesn't guarantee you'll avoid trouble. In fact, it might invite it. But what it does do is bring God's help right into the middle of that trouble. The Israelites had to physically put away their Baals and Ashereths. Their repentance required real, concrete action. And that kind of leaves us with a final question to think about, doesn't it? In a world where our idols might not be stone statues, but are still the things we give our ultimate allegiance to, what needs to be put away today?